After locking us up for many days, our instructor has been acting strangely. Day 1. The sirens went off above as we were opening Chapter 8 of our textbooks. Slats of metal slid down the wall to enclose us as a red strobing light whirled by the entrance. Panicked, the others stirred at their workstations. Right now. I'm sure everything is well, class. Most likely simply a practice. Mr. Jonas tried to calm the audience by raising his hands. He opened his lips, but Evie interrupted him over the intercom. On campus, Level 3 contagion is situated in the southern corner. The procedure for lockdown is currently active. The procedure for isolation is now in place. Oh no. Abruptly, the instructor seemed gaunt and rather alarmed. Day 3. I moved Patricia's bishop aside with my rook by sliding it over the tiled chessboard. As I took it off the board, she defied me by sticking out her tongue. Grinning, I jammed another saltine cracker into my lips. We shouldn't stay in here for very long, according to Mr. Jonas. Presumably, the CDC was taking its time to isolate and eliminate the infection. He replied that if they are keeping us confined in our classrooms, then it must be a fairly dangerous virus. We should have enough munchies for a few more days. When all you have is crackers, candies, and spray cheese in a can, it's hard to ration well. Ultimately, however, all we could truly do was maintain our optimism. For the time being, I'm optimistic. Day 5. There was a bad stench coming from the room. The restrooms were some buckets we'd set aside in the corner, and they were completely disgusting and only halfway filled. Last night, we ran out of food. Even though my stomach was growling, I tried not to pay attention to it. I no longer felt like reading or playing chess. Rather, I spent as much time as possible dozing off at my workstation. I was expecting to be awakened to the sound of the door opening soon so I could go home. My parents were missed. Even Mr. Jonas was becoming agitated. Up until now, he had been rather composed and had made sure we were all at ease. Now, however, his eyes seemed a touch crazy, and he continued to pace the room while muttering to himself. I caught him swearing under his breath a couple times before saying prayers. I really hope we leave this place soon. Day 8. My dreams were interrupted by a loud banging noise coming from the opposite side of the classroom. I closed my eyes slightly to witness the biology instructor repeatedly slam a chair against the steel door, but I remained still as if I was sleeping. He was really going crazy. Please let us leave this place. Mr. Jonas threw the chair to one side and yelled, "That's not possible, sir. There is a level 3 contagion present. You must remain alone for your own protection, even if I have sealed off the impacted area." Over the speakers hummed the artificial voice. He screamed obscenities at the camera that was mounted in the ceiling corner. It seemed like some of the other lads were becoming violent too. The previous 2 mornings had seen a few fights. Additionally, there are some hands that should be elsewhere behind the fictitious plants and scientific apparatus. We seem to be gradually deteriorating, turning into a chimp cage like to one at the zoo. If a little more ravenous, we had to go before anything awful happened. Day 10. We had spent the last 5 days consuming just tap water. Every time I stood at my desk, I felt lightheaded. I would almost pass out as the room spun. My only source of stability was pure resolve. I was insanely afraid that my classmates would devour me if I passed out, much like a hyena pack on a gazelle. I was eating my intestines till they were all over the tile floor. Even if it sounded absurd if I spoke it out, the concept didn't seem so absurd when I saw how many hungry faces there were in the room. Mr. Jonas hasn't spoken for more than 12 hours. He's been using an X-Acto knife to carve something into the surface of his desk while seated. I thought to myself for the first time today that maybe this was not something we were going to survive. It seemed possible that we might all perish in this classroom. I sobbed while hanging my head. Mr. Jonas, Day 13. Stop Mr. Dufted twill be his mustad. Jonas, Micah sobbed. See, don't you? We must take action because we must eat. It's an introduction to survival. They turn on the weakest member of the pack when they are suffering, and there is not enough food. It's just basic biology. The fittest will survive. Trevor felt Mr. Jonas's hands tightening around his neck until it seemed like the boy's eyes would burst out of his head. Beneath him, Trevor struggled, but he was little for his age, and thin. Taking a big beaker from the table, Micah raised it over his head. "Mr. Jonas, please stop immediately. Keep me from doing this." However, the instructor had long since left, his eyes shining with joy and drool trickling down his chin from hunger. Micah threw the beaker as hard as he could against Mr. Jonah's head, and I sprang to my feet upon contact. It broke into a million pieces, rendering the instructor unconscious. "Trevor," I assisted Micah in pushing him off. Tears were streaming down the poor child's cheeks as he gasped for oxygen and wheezed. "It's okay. You're fine. Everything is fine." Micah gave the child a back pat in an attempt to soothe him as he cried. Mr. Jonas was propelled into the air by an abrupt scream that sounded like a battle cry. He sprang over a desk and collided headlong with Micah. They both collapsed upon the tile, despite Micah's resistance. Mr. Jonas ultimately prevailed and started savagely dropping his elbows on Micah's face, causing blood to spurt from his lips and nose. My head was overwhelmed with static. I just responded without thinking. I bent down, took a chunk of glass out of the shattered beaker, and pushed Mr. Jonas's unkempt hair back so he could stretch out his neck. I used all my had to force the glass through the flesh of his neck. Never before had I seen so much blood. It splashed over Micah's chest like a cascade. Mr. Jonas collapsed to the side a second time, never to rise again. With blood on my hands, I gazed at them. I had no emotion, nor regret, nor anxiety, just still. The door suddenly opened and the metal slat slid back into the ceiling. "The procedure for lockdown has been relaxed. Kindly stick to your usual timetables." The procedure for lockdown has been relaxed. Her formerly upbeat, robotic voice suddenly seemed so aloof and inappropriate. The other students gathered around me, gazing blankly at the bloody mess. A part of me wanted to know what it tasted like, but I guess it was just the hunger talking. The others, I believe, did too. Luckily, a guy in a suit entered the classroom before it could occur. "Greetings, class," under the leadys. His flawless teeth glittered. Before we could speak, a group of grown-ups wearing overalls barged into the room. A few started snapping photos of everything. Mr. Jonas was being cleaned up by others. A gray-haired guy placed a big package on the teacher's desk and took it open. To that point, he began tossing granola bars and fresh fruit to each pupil. Everything he handed us, we ate. It took me 2 bananas and 4 granola bars to feel like myself again. They tasted like sweet salvation, like paradise. The first guy in the expensive suit, the one with the lovely teeth, didn't talk to us again until we had all finished. "Guys, I realize it's been a long 13 days, but I appreciate your perseverance. I have informed your parents that you are okay to return home." We all gave each other hugs while the classroom cheered. Even Micah, drenched in blood, was jumping about merrily. "Soon, you may all return home, but not before I do a quick debriefing with each of you. I will set up shop in the counselor's office, and Mr. Moses will come down one by one to hear your side of events during the seclusion." We all gave a nod of agreement, wanting to leave this place as soon as possible. We were taken down one by one by Mr. Moses, the guy with the gray hair and the snacks, and we opened up to him about everything. Even after telling how I had slain Mr. Jonas, I still felt emotionless as I related my narrative. I just felt nothing. Not until I arrived home that evening did I finally break down and cry. I sobbed till I was no longer able to once I was in my mother's arms. After that, I ate my largest meal ever. I gulped noodles till I felt like my stomach was about to explode. It was a positive emotion, to be completely filled, to return to being human. A government cover-up for a top-secret experiment was revealed by a whistles road years later, when I was a student at a university. There had been no infection or spread. It started off as a test run for the school's artificial intelligence system. However, it eventually turned into a sociological experiment to see how long it would take until someone was killed or gravely injured. to put morality and politeness to the test while under extreme duress. In the unlikely event that there was a genuine problem with the AI and the programming and that this situation materialized elsewhere, the experiment had come to an end when I murdered Mr. Jonas. I felt ill to my stomach after hearing the news, and for weeks I was detested and furious. But now I was cool with it. You see, Trevor was a genius in addition to being little and maybe the weakest member of the Pride. We were able to track down Mr. Nice Teeth and Mr. Moses thanks to his hacking skills. After 6 days, I can't help but grin every time they yell and rap on the door with a chair. A couple of us are involved in a small-scale experiment. When someone is killed or seriously hurt, it will come to an end. Perhaps